Book report. It's a book report. It's a book report about a movie. 'Cause that makes sense. Alex, we're here. We're here to talk about Stargate. Are you excited?
I'm super excited.
We didn't plan to do this, actually. Jeff couldn't show up for recording, so Alex and I were like, what can we do? What's immediately accessible in our brains that we're not exactly prepared for, but we could just throw off? And you had watched Stargate. You talked about it in 2 parts in like a couple of our last episodes.
Mm-hmm.
You watched the first half and was like, this is terrible. And then you watched the second half and you were like, this is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one night I don't know, I think it was, we talked so much shit about Roland Emmerich on this podcast. And it had been so long since I'd seen one of his movies. I just had the morbid curiosity to go back. And so I chose Stargate. I was on Amazon or whatever service it was on. And I was like, oh, Stargate. Alex just watched that. I'm going to watch it. I got some beers, thankfully, to get myself through it. And I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, oh boy, was it dumb.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible.
I have this written down. It is aggressively dumb. Painfully dumb. Dumber than the concept of dumbness itself, distilled and multiplied into endless infinities of dumbness. That's my distillation.
I mean, I have to start with the question.
Yeah.
And it's worse than Independence Day. Because we know you and Jeff are not a fan of the movie. I like the movie, not because of its merit necessarily, because of more of its reputation that I have with it. But this is worse than Independence Day. This has to be worse.
I don't know. I haven't seen Independence Day in a very, very long time. I don't plan on ever watching it again unless you make us,
okay.
Which is fair play. You totally can. I think it would be an interesting conversation, but I think it's also maybe a conversation that's been had as well.
Yeah.
By other critics and stuff like that. But so like I was going to write a intro for this to describe the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But what I ended up doing was digging through the IMDb reviews for the segment that we do later, which will be reacting to reviews. And I found the perfect way to summarize the plot of this movie. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Stargate is a time travel movie about a doomed archaeologist, James Spader, who gets a call from an old lady that tells him about this discovery where a portal can communicate with other dimensions. After figuring out the codes in the hieroglyphics on the machine, Dr. Jackson, Spader, along with Colonel Jack O'Neill, Kurt Russell, the military and scientist, see that maybe there's a chance to see what's on the other side. O'Neill and Jackson go in with a group of Marines and discover that they're part of the other dimension where it resembles Egypt, with a god by the name of Ra, who comes to hurt the civilians, where it's just a matter of time before the expedition becomes extinct, if not finding their way home. That's like 2 sentences. I don't know if this was written by a child or possibly a foreigner. There are many misspellings and grammatical errors.
Okay.
Or if it's just somebody who has a Pop-Tart for a brain.
So that could have been a review, or it could have been a 6th grader's like book report on the film, right?
Yeah.
That was very by the book, very dry and very clean, just telling us like it is. Almost as stale as Kurt Russell's character in the film, which I love Kurt Russell. I just want to get that out there. And I do actually like James Spader quite a bit as well. But the flat top and everything on Kurt Russell in this movie made him so rigid. And then like that jamming and like ham-fisting of this post-traumatic like experience that he has from, his son is so awkward.
I was going to ask you about that actually, because I can't remember like the second half of this movie.
Oh, I know. Your brain kind of just turn into much, don't you? And you just are like a being that you like You're like, my eyes are receiving light. Yes. My auditory ears are receiving their signals. And then like, you can't focus on anything else.
I don't know. I know I watched the whole thing. I didn't like shut my eyes, I don't think. The last time I did that, legitimately shut my eyes and watching a movie, was, I think, in the film class we watched Transformers for some fucking reason. Don't ask me why. Film class at Berkeley, people watch Transformers.
Oh, no way.
But that movie was painful on my eyes and my ears and my senses. This one wasn't. It was just dumb, and it was bludgeoningly dumb to the point where, coupled with beer, of course, probably like a 6-pack throughout the movie, by the end I was just, my brain had checked out. But my question was, like, with that Kurt Russell intro as hard-ass military man, his kid blew his brains out, right? Does this lead to any form of character arc?
Honestly, no.
I didn't think so, but I couldn't remember.
No, it doesn't. I mean,
we both watched this like a week ago, by the way.
It's just his... It's what makes him... I don't know. It's like his drive. It's like his masculine defect, I guess, that he somehow needs to overcome. He's like, I'm the best of the best of the best. But I also have this really deep and dark secret and skeletons in the closet, you know? He has like, what, 6 lines in the whole fucking movie? And he just grimaces the whole time. It never comes back. The whole thing is they're sending him because he has like nothing to live for, right?
Right, because there's a whole subplot about blowing up the Stargate if they find danger on the other side.
Exactly, because they don't want it to come back into our world. So he's like, oh, I'm the perfect candidate for this because I want to join my son. He is suicidal himself, I believe.
Okay. That I could see that as being, I could see Roland Emmerich's brain thinking that and thinking that's like a character arc. It didn't translate very well, I don't think.
Oh, it was done terribly.
But I see you start this movie, the movie started out on a really bad footing with me immediately. You start out with James Spader giving a science talk about pyramids, saying how there's evidence that they weren't built at the time that we think they are. And people are like, well, who built them? Keeping in mind that this is an academic setting where you would think that it's other scholars in the audience, but people are just fed up when he says, I don't know who built them, and they're like, oh, what a dummy, and they just leave. And immediately I was like, okay, this movie is made for idiots. By the way, if you like this movie, we maybe should have started with this. You're gonna fucking hate this conversation.
Yeah.
Not that you didn't already get that. But it's like, that was the first in a very long line of intellectually insulting beats that this movie hits.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that is not how things work in an academic setting. And if you have any like knowledge of that, then it's irritating, to say the least.
It's like many of his movies, very proppy, right? Every single character is a caricature of themselves, and they're so superficial that they fall down with an even inkling of any type of critical like pushback. Each character is just so cookie cutter, and this movie was so overly done that like I expected the lines before they came.
The part of your brain that's seen all these terrible movies before that are generic and like knows what to expect in terms of movie dialogue is like, this is the line that's coming. But then the other part of your brain is like, no, it can't be that flat and that generic. Boy, oh boy, is that other side of your brain right? It's gonna be that generic every time.
That's why I love his haircut in this movie.
Kurt Russell's?
Yeah, it's like just so, it like embodies the film so much for me. It's just so flat.
Yeah. Oh man, you have the stupid briefing room scene where he tells everyone to share. And this is the point in the movie where I felt that every human in this movie is operating on about 50% of the normal brain capacity of a normal human. And where some of the stereotypes in terms of like generals start to get really irritating, where it's like nobody knows anything about anything except for James Spader. He walks in and immediately decodes these hieroglyphics that apparently scientists have been working on for years. He just walks in total movie form and just knows exactly what to do.
Yep.
I have another question for you.
Yeah.
Was this movie framed in a future scenario?
Oh,
is it supposed to take place in the future?
No, I don't believe so.
No, right?
Because they do the flashback at the very beginning. It starts off in the 30s or some shit.
I don't remember that at all, I'll be honest.
Okay. It's the old woman when she's young. She finds her father is a archaeologist or some shit, and he finds these stones engraved with glyphs on them.
Okay. Yeah, I have completely forgotten that.
Yeah, so it was supposed to be modern time for mid 90s.
Yeah, 1994. So my point with that question is that another insulting thing this movie does is that science doesn't matter, right? In the year 1994, we somehow have technology that can go through a Stargate, which presumably is very far away, and read the atmosphere on an alien world and communicate that back with zero delay. When they go through, they even are able to communicate themselves back to NASA or whatever the hell, whatever government compound with no delay. Right? Am I right?
No. I mean, I think if you come to the film looking breaking it down that way, the logical and scientific grasp that it has on its own concepts, it falls apart from the start extremely quickly,
But some people are definitely going to say this is nitpicky for sure. And it doesn't matter. It's a movie. It's a movie. And there is some validity to that argument where it's like Star Wars, right? Star Wars doesn't give a fuck about science either. In Star Wars, you can fly to the Dagobah system in a little TIE fighter thing or whatever Luke flies.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about the time it takes or fuel or anything like that. So why does it annoy me so much in this movie? Am I just wanting to be annoyed because I have this vision of it in my head?
No, I mean,
and it's also why is something like The Mummy? Why does that get a pass?
Yeah.
I mean, I had my qualms with that too, but that feels like the same kind of movie, but it
doesn't
right? make me angry like this does.
Well, this movie is an exercise in just increased ridiculousness. It just starts getting crazier and crazier. And that's what I thought was interesting about this movie, is that it was pretty bad from the start, but still interesting enough to keep watching. And the second half of the film, I want to say, might be some of the most unwatchable garbage ever made. And it...
when we find out Ra's an alien and just something about minerals.
The love story that starts to develop between the scientist and a literal otherworldly being that he just met in the midst of this
Well, you didn't like the ham-fisted comedy romance?
No, see,
she's
that's what I mean.
Gifted to him by the desert guy.
The interaction between this is the wonderful little idiosyncrasies and the strange little things that happen when two cultures clash. It was so bad. It was done so terribly, and it was so campy. There's something about this film that I wanted to say really quick, though. It spawned a humongous following, right? And it spawned a humongous legacy of other art that's related to it, part of its canon. And yeah, I think that's really interesting for how terrible this movie is. It almost spits on my face, kind of. Just it doesn't matter how bad I am.
Yeah, it cost $55 million. It made $200 million overall. So, quadruple. And it did spawn multiple TV shows, the whole idea. I mean, conceptually, it's cool. You go through Stargate and there's another civilization, and then linking it to Egyptology is kind of bonkers and could be pretty interesting with a completely different script.
Get that ancient aliens.
Yeah, I mean,
vibe.
we've noted this with Roland Emmerich before, where it's it boggles my mind as well, and it always has. Independence Day is one of the biggest movies ever.
Oh, it's successful. Yeah.
It's massively successful. It's massively impactful, I guess.
It's people well loved, yeah.
it's well loved. People our age especially have this incredible nostalgia for that film. It's hard to say if it had any like resonations because of its own like artistic merit, because all it did was like turn Spielberg into McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So any other movie that tries to do Spielberg in the most like ham-fisted way possible, you just be like, oh, they're trying to do Spielberg.
Mm-hmm.
Like Roland Emmerich's style is just Spielberg, but with like, you know, it feels so manufactured.
He's like the Jack in the Box to Spielberg's McDonald's.
Those are both terrible. I don't know if I can get behind that example, Alex.
I mean, one is like the king of fast food. One is the one that set the standard of it, so it's hard to knock him because it is his own style, and he's pretty good at it. Spielberg, right? Yeah. And then the other one's like, hey, we serve French fries and hamburgers too, just shittier. Like, I don't know.
Spielberg feels genuine.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he was the inventor of the modern blockbuster with Jaws and Indiana Jones and stuff like that. And that's a question I had for you as well. And I really don't know where I sit with this. Is Roland Emmerich making movies cynically? Is this a cynical movie, or is it just a dumb product from a dumb director?
I think it's more of the latter. I do think sometimes
we are so pretentious, by the way. I know. Just lean into it. It's okay.
I feel like, though, I was going to ask you, like, going off of that question, do you think there's something that is... He's German, right? Roland Emmerich? Do you think that...
German, yes.
Do you think that there's something going on there? Because, like, Uwe Boll is also German. And when they make these movies for, like, English-speaking audiences, and mostly English-speaking audiences... Do you think that there's like something that is lost in translation there? Do you think that they're like picking up on things that they've seen in American drama films when they were growing up or something like that, that is kind of outdated or campy or like superficial? And they think like,
I don't know.
That's how films are made. I think almost kind of like Tommy Wiseau in The Room. Something about his whole experience makes me wonder if his... Without being racist, obviously, because obviously they're great foreign filmmakers, but I just was wondering if there's something that gets lost in like their perception of what they think Americans like. You know? Does that make sense at all?
Well, it makes sense for Uwe Boll.
Mm-hmm.
Like his movies are just hot trash. Yeah. They're like Ed Wood level of like he doesn't know what he's doing. Roland Emmerich is like technically competent.
Yeah, no.
You don't see like the shots are fine. There's a lot of like big costumes and the effects are generally well done and people really like it. It's just yeah, I think you're right probably with Uwe Boll, but Roland Emmerich, because it's just such a flattened American cheese version of cinema. Mm-hmm. It's the flattening American cheese of cinema that's already the most popcorny type of cinema.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like
actually.
just it's a distillation of Jaws or Indiana Jones into its like most basic components.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And then just thrown out there because that's what movies do.
That's
all the way down to the score. Like the score is I had this written down. I can't find it. I had a thing about the score, but it's basically like it has that manufactured wonder, right? The score is perfectly emblematic to me of what I feel about Roland Emmerich. Is like it feels like manufactured wonder. Nothing in there feels genuine, but I almost wonder if that's wrong. Like that, and that was my question to you: is like, is he doing this cynically? And I don't know. And I think I'd tend towards your camp. I think no. I think he's like actually thinks he's making like, I don't know, not necessarily smart entertainment, but I think he's genuinely producing what he wants to produce.
Right.
And so it's hard to be angry with that.
It's like, it would be like, for instance, if you had a chef, a very well-trained chef, like technically, mechanically, right? And you were
Hello,
like,
Jeff Casino.
Exactly.
I thought you weren't here today.
A little shout out to our third missing Reel Weirdo. But what if they were like, no, I don't want to work in the premier restaurant in Paris. I want to be a McDonald's line cook. And it's like, can you fault that? If he's self-aware enough that he's like, oh no, like my movies, he's like, I'm making a movie, right? Like if he used some of our terminology that we throw around. If he said that, it would totally blow my mind and change the way that I would see his movies.
Well, I think there's interviews you can track down where he and Dean Devlin, who's his longtime co-conspirator on this schlock, says like they like making broad entertainment and popcorn movies.
Oh, okay.
Like that's their thing, is making popcorn movies.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just it's an interesting delineation, right? To go back to the Mummy and Star Wars, is what makes those things work for me when Roland Emmerich movies are like nails on a chalkboard. So it's like I cannot begin to describe how dumb everything is.
Yeah, I mean sorry, that's hilarious. But yeah, the Mummy I actually think passes because it's not as quite as fantastical. It's like it decided what it wants to do, right? It's like, we're gonna go with this Egypt thing, and we're gonna go hard with that little 1930s, 1940s Indiana Jones type thing, right? And you're like, okay, that works because it's simple.
And it has the characterization in it is actually charming as opposed to just flat.
Well, yeah, Roland Emmerich's like, I want Egypt in there. I want fucking, space people. I want a space buffalo to drag someone across the desert,
Oh yeah.
Like
the alien.
Yeah. Like he wants aliens. He wants prosthetic outfits. He wants organic creatures. He wants like steel, futuristic concept technology. He wants it all mixed with the hieroglyphics, and it just is at one point you're just like, okay, this is just too much. You needed to choose one thing and just go with it, right? But Star Wars, let's say it doesn't ever tell you, or it does, the little blurb at the beginning, the most famous long time ago Galaxy Far Away thing. That is such a simple and effective technique that was used by a lot of those, Buck Rogers shows and everything that they base that stuff on, that takes you out of the reality and makes it okay to deal in space. And it was like, you never needed to be like, oh, well, how do they have these lasers and lightsabers and everything? Because you were already just sucked into that anyways. Whereas with this film, it just unravels itself. It goes from kind of logical project to highly ridiculous just exercise in all directions.
It also does a thing that Roland Emmerich likes to do. And it doesn't do it as egregiously as in some of his later films.
Okay.
Where everyone is kind of the comedic relief character, or like really dumb. So I keep using this fucking word dumb, but it is just dumb. Like comic relief elements are just sprinkled in, regardless of whether they make tonal sense for a scene or not. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I guess that works for some people. I think it works for a lot of people.
Oh, I mean, it worked well enough for $200 million worth of people at the theater, right? That's a good point about he does do that a lot, because it's in Independence Day a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like,
they're like joking about, I don't know, like banging each other's moms or kicking E.T.'s butt or whatever, when it's like,
yeah,
the situation that you're in, like you would not be this flippant.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's the weird thing about this film, is that like when they're interacting with this new culture and it's all like lackadaisical, hunky-dory, kind of goofy, I'm like, this is not how this would go down, right?
No.
Like, this would be a very dark psychological experience. Like, you don't know if you can trust these other beings. You're dealing with the existential crisis of knowing that there is life somewhere else and that you are in some other universe. Like, I just don't understand how you can go and fly through the Stargate, and then, you know, they're all like, all right, we need to set up base camp right here, right now, do all this. It's like, no. What the fuck is going on?
Well, he gets dragged off by the monster from Labyrinth, the David Bowie film,
yes.
I guess.
Yeah.
Whatever that thing was supposed to be, a Star Wars creature, I don't know.
Yeah.
And they see, like, the distant city. It's not distant, actually. It's whatever this village is, like, right over the crest of this sand dune.
Uh-huh.
And they're just standing there in full view. Like, the military guys and James Spader are just standing there in full view, just, like, looking down. And it's like, you would... I don't know. It hurt my brain. I was like, no, you wouldn't just stand there. And then they get noticed, and they're like, oh, they noticed us. I guess we'll just walk down there. It was like, because they needed to, you know, hang out with these people for the script to continue, for the movie to continue. It lacked all conceivable logic in my brain.
My favorite part about this movie is probably the fact that, like, they're interacting with this ultra hyper intelligent, like, race, you know, and, like,
Are they?
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
Who?
That's what it's, like, supposed to be, like, Ra and the gods that are part of them.
Oh, them.
You know?
Yeah.
They use, like, they're like, oh, I made the bomb, like, super strong or whatever. We're going to send it back through the gate, you know, to destroy Earth. And also that there's, like, people living in caves and shit. It's some weird, like, tribal scene. I don't know. It's, like, white tribal people. And I lost it at that point. I was like, this movie's terrible.
That's where my brain checked out, and I have very scattered memories of the rest of it.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
I remember
about this
images.
movie.
I remember, like, Kurt Russell running around inside of a pyramid with, like, some kind of laser scepter or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They have a revolution. They, like, ate a
That's right.
revolution in this village.
They hand these kids, they hand out machine guns to the children and stuff.
It's... Americans are so fucking predictable, right? Like, we find a new place, and within seconds, we're just like, all right, we need to arm these people and fucking fund a revolution, and then we'll take power.
Do you think that was, like...
No.
Roland Emmerich making meta
Don't
commentary?
even ask that. No. There's no way. Because, you know, if he was that type of intelligence, like something that clever, would leak through. It would shine through.
Maybe he's a secret genius.
It would shine through a little bit in the film, just by way of mistake, if it was trying to be that clever. And there's
maybe it's insulting. He's just insulting America and getting paid for it. Because all the military guys, all the American military guys are horrifyingly stereotypical jocks who can't understand the most logical things. Like James Spader's like, nah, I can't get you back until I find, like, a key to translate this. And they're like, oh, we're going to be jock douches from college and, like, throw your books down a sand dune. And I don't know. I don't remember any of their dialogue. I just remember being like...
I know. And it's just hilarious to think, you know, like, the world decides to send this crack team of people just because... You know, it's like Armageddon.
They don't send scientists. You don't send military people with, like, any kind of intellect. You send... It is like Armageddon.
Yes.
It's like, let's send the people who the absolute lowest common denominator people in the audience will relate
exactly
to, regardless of any logic.
At least in movies like The Rock, like, you have this idea where it's like, oh... The island has been taken over by Marines, right? We're going to send a Navy SEAL team in. And so you have a reason why this Navy SEAL team, the characters within it act the way that they do. This was just a grouping of generic military guys, right? They're just like, just throw them in there. It makes sense if it was like, we're sending, like, this special, highly elite fucking force or whatever, you know? And Kurt Russell's the badass who's leading them. But no, it was just, like, the most inept dudes. And you're right, like, I don't know. Like, I can't imagine anywhere just, like, military operations in the world being interrupted by some jock just coming in, like, sweeping the table of blueprints off or something, you know? and then laughing about it. It's just
they
sent like 10 or they sent less than 10 people.
Yeah, they sent like 8 guys. I don't know. It's dumb, Alex. It's so fucking dumb that it defies explanation. It might, I don't know. I was thinking about this. I'm sure I've seen something dumber. I can't conjure it though. Mm-hmm. I mean, is this better or worse than In the Name of the King? Because that's a standard that some of our listeners might know, because we did cover that one.
So I would say it's only slightly better, only because it's slightly more polished as a film, technically.
It's like decently constructed, because it's not convoluted. It's just maybe it's convoluted towards the end though.
Oh, it's fucking.
This movie's hard on my brain.
It's fucking insane towards the end. But like the filmmaking necessarily doesn't get worse. It doesn't get worse because of ineptitude. It gets worse because of decision making. Whereas with Uwe Boll's film, right, it was like starting to fall apart just because you're like, this is a person who doesn't fully grasp his own medium.
Yeah.
So
the language of film just isn't quite working with him in that film or any film.
Exactly. Whereas Roland Emmerich is still successful. I mean,
he's majorly successful.
The Day After Tomorrow is one of his movies I think I remember liking as well. And
well, if you revisit it, you're going to have a similar feeling to this. I guarantee it. It's up there on the dumb scale.
He likes his science-y sci-fi disaster movie. And loves his military characters. They're always in a lot of his movies, I feel like. I will say one thing that James Spader said about this film is that he was intrigued, he said, because he found it, quote, awful. But after meeting the director, he got excited because he said that it would be an adventure. So, maybe for all that it's worth, maybe Roland Emmerich is just a really cool fucking guy to hang out with. Maybe he's just really nice. Maybe he's just a good dude. I don't know. And people are...
He seems like he might be.
And people are just like...
No offense to him on a personal level.
Yeah.
Hey, Roland Emmerich, do you want to come on the show and you can pick a movie and we'll all talk about it?
Exactly.
You're invited. I'm sure you won't ever hear this. And you'll probably hate us if you do. But, the invitation is out there. Everyone tweet at Roland Emmerich.
That would be fucking amazing.
Tell him to go on the hit dark web show Reel Weirdos. I remember my point. I think that In the Name of the King is definitely worse, but it's more interesting.
Okay.
Like, that movie was such an interesting failure to me of how you can do everything wrong. And it's like, it's almost trying to be a Roland Emmerich thing, right? Where it's like, whereas Roland Emmerich does Spielberg.
Yeah.
In the Name of the King was trying to do in The Lord of the Rings, but it was so massively mishandled, miscast, terribly acted, terribly structured, badly shot. Mostly, like, the battles were just a slog to get through.
So was this film, though, I felt like Stargate wasn't necessarily terribly acted by some of the characters, and I don't think it was terribly cast. But I also think that it's because it was so bad that I can't even, like, plausibly imagine thinking about plugging in people to this plot.
Yeah.
I don't know, though.
We don't need to do that. I do have a number of reviews for you, though, if you want to move on to that.
Let's do it.
So I was looking at critic reviews, and I was like, hold on. Where the real gold is going to be is in just, like, user reviews. So I have a number of these here. This one, I had distilled this. A classic, but not for me, too much talking. Gore, 0 out of 5. Nudity, 0 out of 5. Effects, 3 out of 5. Story, 2 out of 5. Comedy, 0 out of 5. I mean, he got the comedy right. I just love that it's a classic, but not for me, too much talking.
Yeah, that part, industrious review. I like that review.
Well, I cut out the whole middle part. That was the beginning and the end.
Too much talking.
Yeah, I can't remember what their other point was.
Not a
I think
classic.
It was like it didn't have enough action. Like they just wanted nonstop action. I'm like, did you see the second half of this movie? It was nothing but a clusterfuck of like what is happening action.
Well, that's an example then maybe of someone who wasn't like satiated enough by enough stupidity, right? Like they wanted something like In the Name of the King instead.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, here's one. The movie is careful to stay away from many of the cliches of most sci-fi movies, but also stays away from characters which are too simple. Both Daniel and Jack, played by James and Kurt, are real people, not cardboard cutouts, with all the flaws and merits of our own reality.
Jesus.
Respond, Alex.
No, that isn't real.
That is real. These are pulled from the IMDb reviews.
Okay, so without offending anyone, I just want to say while you were reading that review, I like imagined maybe a 50-year-old, really overweight white woman who maybe still does her hair the same way she did it in the 1980s and like works it as a reception desk or something. Like,
I'm picturing one of the old ladies from Edward Scissorhands from some reason,
yes.
as you described
Hell yes,
that.
exactly. Like the Avon Calling ladies, right? Like that are like, oh, this movie was delightful. Jesus.
See, my question with that one is like, what is a cardboard cutout for you if not the characters in this film?
If Kurt Russell's hair is literally not cut out of cardboard in this movie for you. Yeah, I mean, what would that person call a bad film? The Green Knight? Probably. Stuff like that, you know? Maybe There Will Be Blood.
There Will Be Blood to be like, I don't get it. Like, what's the story?
Exactly.
Where's the action?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll put on a voice for this one. In the sci-fi genre, Stargate is just a classic. For a movie made in 1994, it was just good. Certainly if you consider they didn't have the same technology as now to make a movie full of special effects. If this movie had been made now, it would look like done by amateurs, but for that time, it was just spectacular. The story itself is plausible and entertaining to watch, and was just the beginning for a whole bunch of other movies and series to come. I wouldn't say everything is perfect in this movie, as the acting and action looked a bit old-fashioned, but it got my attention for the entire movie, and that's not evident when it comes to older movies. Okay, first off, the story is plausible. I could not even read that with a straight voice.
Apparently that's enough.
Straight face or straight voice.
That's enough.
I don't know what they're saying.
The story is plausible.
The action looked a bit old-fashioned, and that's not evident when it's about older movies. I can't translate exactly the end of this. I think he's saying that...
this is either a second language, English second language speaker, which would make sense. There's some things that get, lost in translation, fall by the wayside. Or this is like a terrible, terrible symptom of the United States education system and our literacy rate.
Yeah. I mean, there's that statistic about how most police can't write at a 4th grade level.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think so, but I mean, I don't know. People aren't... Oh, God, we sound such douchebags.
I mean,
this show.
No. I'm not going to let people get away with okay, Stargate.
Not being able to construct sentences.
Yeah, if you like Stargate, that's fine. I can see. The thing is I'll shit on this movie, but I understand 100% why it's popular. I'm sure Jesse, I'm sure you do too. However,
yeah, honestly, if you do like this movie, great.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Sure, whatever. It's a easily watchable, turn your brain off and eat popcorn movie. I have those too.
Exactly.
I have those too. I think it's incredibly stupid and bad, but if you're in on it, good for you.
However, if you can't just spell or punctuate or just write a simple movie review that we can read and understand, that we have to translate in our native language, then I don't know. I'm going to talk shit on you, I guess. I just don't have any more time for that. This whole anti-intellectual thing. You can be anti-intellectual, but that learning to read and write is a basic trait of all of civilization.
This whole episode is us being anti-intellectual.
Yeah, exactly.
They're it's dumb. We're smart. That's dumb. We're smart. You know what? If you say that to us, that's all we're doing. You know what? Fair play. All right, I got another one. One more, and then there's a couple critic ones. Stargate is nothing but a good old-fashioned action film that offers a fun time. It has a solid story, well-developed characters, and a good sci-fi setting. This is one of the early films of Roland Emmerich, who directed such hits like Independence Day and The Day After Tomorrow. We see his flair for action and explosive special effects here. I liked this movie because this is one of those films that doesn't require thinking with an overly complicated plot, because all this film does is entertain, and it clearly shows that.
Okay, I can get behind that review, I guess. I mean...
Yeah, if you like this movie because it doesn't require thinking,
you're...
Fair play.
Yeah, you're right, you know, like...
Yeah, if I didn't think, I would enjoy things a lot more in general.
Yeah.
Movies and otherwise.
So yeah, I've never seen the TV show. I've heard it's pretty good, I guess. You know, every time I hear it's pretty good, though, it's never from like an unbiased source. It's kind of like Battlestar Galactica or other culty shows like that. It's like the people who are telling me it's good are wearing Stargate like SG-1 t-shirts as they're telling me this, you know, on just like a random Wednesday. They're like, "Oh, that show's great," and I'm like,
it does make sense that the person recommending something to you is a fan of that thing.
Well, that's what I mean. Is that like it's just I've never had someone who isn't necessarily overtly a fan of it being like
an ultra fan.
Yeah, being like, "Oh yeah, that's a pretty good show. You should watch it." You know, it's always someone who's like, "Oh, you haven't seen this show? You should watch it." And it's very clear and apparent that the lore, they're all about like the lore, you know? You know, sometimes there's just certain things that people exude. You know, you see a Slytherin pin on people, you see like random stuff in the world that people wear for certain stuff, and you're like, "Oh, you're one of those people." It's like Disney people.
Which one are you, if you were on any of those things?
Ooh, that's a good question.
What pin what pin would you wear?
I mean, based on this episode, just like the high horse one, I guess.
Yeah.
Like just
we're on our fucking high horse today.
Noses turned up into the air.
Yeah.
But
we're like eating caviar.
I know.
Like just like making fun of the unwashed masses from our high horse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
well, this
I don't know.
This review here.
Fuck.
This here review got me thinking. This is from an actual critic. The kind of flick where Kurt Russell dispatches an Anubis-looking baddie after first telling him in the kind of bon mot that elevates the thing an entire letter grade, "Give my regards to King Tut, asshole."
Oh.
So this that line elevated it an entire letter grade for this critic. I think it dropped it a whole letter grade for me.
Well,
you know? And I was like, why though? Because some of these action one-liners are amazing. Like you have the classic Schwarzenegger ones, blow off some steam, Bennett, shit like that. And I was questioning this in my own little brain box here. And I think it's because "Give my regards to King Tut, asshole" is dumb and not funny.
Yeah, no, I think that critic is actually like keying in on something that we were kind of talking about with Roland Emmerich, and that you were asking him, you know, where he's like, you're like, is he just making movies that he knows are like highly entertaining, but just low effort storylines? And I think that like there are sometimes when movies have lines like that, when they don't take themselves seriously. And it's not even acknowledging or being self-aware. It's more of just like playing to their audience and playing in their league, not trying to play too high, right?
It's pandering. Yeah,
exactly.
You put it in there because that's what you do in this kind of movie.
Like, what if he started quoting a Shakespeare sonnet, right? That would be so out of place and weird. It would be elevated, yes. It would be a moment where you had...
It wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. It would just be like, this is ridiculous, and this film is trying to be so many different things, even more than it is. But when you have a line like that, I don't know. It just works. It just works.
Well, it works for you?
No, I mean, it works.
That line works for you?
No, it works within the context of what this film is. Like, I expect it from this film, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be chock full of lines like that.
Another thing I was seeing just in the general critical reception, whether it's user or whoever, is an interesting delineation in what is camp, right? Because some people are like, this is a masterpiece of camp. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I only prepped for this episode an hour early before we started, so I didn't have a chance to like fully come up with a thought process on this one. But I did like the question that it brought up, which is like, what defines camp? Because for me, this isn't campy. And maybe it borders on it, but I don't know if camp needs to be more self-aware or not. Like, do you have a thought on this?
I think actually that it can exist in both. I think camp can be one that is like a unintended byproduct of someone who is actually trying really hard and thinks that they're making something really serious and profound, which I think makes it all the more like cringeworthy. That's when you get the best ones, like The Room.
Exactly.
That is like
Samurai Cop, stuff like that.
Those are like the prime examples of it, right? And then you have the camp that is like kind of tongue-in-cheek, a la David Lynch, Twin Peaksy. You know, he'll use like really old, washed up, like not washed up, but just like 1950s kind of like movie talk with some of his characters, but it's acknowledged in the actual content of the show, so it's accepted. And then you have Stargate, where I think it kind of falls in the middle, but leans more towards the former that I was speaking of.
It feels kind of like, you know that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Happening?
Is that the one with the plants and Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel? Yes.
Yeah, where it's like his whole idea for that film, he touted it as it being like a masterpiece of horror. And then it came out and everyone fucking laughed at how awful it was. And he was like, oh, it's supposed to be a comedy. He did a whole like 180 on it.
I've never heard that. Damn. I thought he just kind of stayed quiet and like never responded to critics. Because talk about a bright light, man. I liked Signs, and I liked a little bit of The Village.
Signs had some fun stuff.
Yeah. I liked
Sixth Sense, of course, was a massive hit, and it's a good movie. Unbreakable.
I liked a little bit of The Village. I thought there were cool elements to it, but
all I remember about that movie is that I called the twist, and I was like, it better not be that. And then it was that, and I was like, oh, God.
Oh, in The Village?
Stop doing twists.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know, right?
But anyway, let's round this out with a segment of a review from our boy Roger Ebert.
Oh, yeah.
Stargate is like a film school exercise. Assignment: conceive of the weirdest plot you can think of and reduce it as quickly as possible to action movie cliches. There you go, buddy. There's your Ebert.
Oh, man.
Oh, there's this. Oh, this is the last one. Sorry. I have one more. This guy, I'll shout him out too. Alex Sandell, whoever the fuck you are. His score, it just says, Roland Emmerich's Reign of Terror begins. 0 out of 5. I was like, perfect.
Oh, that's fucking amazing.
The Reign of Terror begins. Yeah, he's gone on to make many films.
Yeah.
I've somehow seen a lot of them.
Me too. And I've even enjoyed some of them.
He's remaking Stargate. I think we might have noted that. I think I found this when you were talking about it on another episode.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I kind of knew this movie was going to be bad. But I just kept seeing it on Netflix or HBO or whatever it's on. And I kept like hovering over it and thinking to myself, I got to just watch it. I just got to get it out of the way, right? Knowing that it's there.
You got to know.
And that it exists. Like, there are a lot of films like that, I think, for me that I have yet to open.
I had to just pull off the Band-Aid sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to watch every big budget sci-fi, whether it's like terrible or not. I don't know why. Like, dude, I watched The Tomorrow War.
I was just about to say, I can't. Yeah, I remember recommending not to watch it, and I had never seen it. Still have never seen it, and you did it.
There was 0% of me that didn't think that movie would be dumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
100% knew it was going to be dumb. I just didn't know how dumb. It was basically a Roland Emmerich film. If you're a fan of Stargate, you probably like The Tomorrow War. But if you're a fan of Stargate and you've made it through this whole conversation, I don't know what universe or timeline you're in.
Bravo.
Bravo.
Yeah.
And hopefully you don't hate us, because we don't hate you.
Exactly.
We just don't like Roland Emmerich movies.
No. And we have to talk about movies like this if we're going to talk about other big, good movies that we like.
Yeah, like this is, you can draw comparisons to this to the Royal Tenenbaums, right?
Oh, Jesus.
Come on, Alex, make this leap in logic for me.
Let's see. Yes.
Yes. All right. There we go. That's a book report with Jesse and Alex. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back soon, hopefully with our pal Jeff Casino.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And hope you don't hate us too much.
Or if you do, whatever.
Perfect. Book report. It's a book report. It's a book report about a movie. 'Cause that makes sense.